Hey everybody, how's it going? When it comes to right to repair, I am more than happy to speak with people on the other side of the aisle, or people who disagree with me, or think that right to repair, what I advocate for, is silly or improper. If you go through my Reddit post history, you'll see quite a few posts in response to lots of heavy criticism from a group r/Apple, where most of the posts that I read are from people that just hate me for the fact that I exist. I have no problem engaging with people on the other side of the aisle, because that's how we figure out how we can move forward, how we can solve problems, and how things can be made better for everyone. The reason that I don't have many chats where I give the Apple side of the argument here is because there usually isn't one. There's usually just PR, copied and pasted, social media manager talking points that I'm not engaging with an actual argument. But I am more than happy to. Now, when it comes to farmers' right to repair, I actually received a very extensive and detailed reply from an individual that works at John Deere. And I would like to share everything that I learned and read here so that you can decide what you think of these arguments. When it comes to right to repair in my industry, I think that I'm very well informed and qualified to speak on it. When it comes to farmers' right to repair, I live in Brooklyn. We have 10 trees here. I've never driven a tractor, tried to fix a tractor. I've never worked on a farm. The closest I got to even seeing a farm was when my parents took me to Amish country, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, when I was 6 years old. I don't have any experience here. I was never expecting to be advocating on behalf of farmers. I was very, very surprised in March of 2017 when I went to Nebraska to testify at a right to repair hearing. And that morning, when everybody who was going to go to the hearing got breakfast, almost everybody there was a farmer. One of the people said, don't take this the wrong way. I was just never expecting a YouTube dude from New York that runs a business to be the one that showed up here advocating for us. It was just kind of odd. And I think he was referring to the general cultural differences and schism in society right now between people who live in the flyover states and people who live on the coast. But we have a lot of the same issues. John Deere, in many ways, acts similarly to how Apple acts. We have a lot of the same complaints, the people that work on farms and their own farm equipment, and people like me that try to, work on these devices, but you can't because you can't buy an ISL 9240. So there's a lot of crossover there. But when it comes to farm equipment, again, I'm very clueless here. So I can't really rebut arguments very well, which is why when it comes to these right to repair hearings, I ask that farmers show up, because I will look stupid trying to advocate on behalf of farmers with my limited experience. Now, someone watched one of my videos that I released 2 months ago who works at John Deere, and he sent me a very good set of points as to where he thinks right to repair has gone wrong, what is correct, what is incorrect, and he seems to be coming from a good place. This does not look like some sort of social media manager, PR, just graduated with their PR degree, damage control person, pulling stuff out of their ass without real experience. It sounds like it was written by someone who does have real-world experience, who, even if you may disagree with him, appears to be speaking in good faith. So I'm going to read what it is they sent me. I'm also going to include a copy and paste of it down below in a post, and you let me know what you think of it. And if you're a farmer, if you do work on tractors, let me know where you think this is correct, where you think this is incorrect, what you think, how you think this shapes right to repair going forward for farm equipment, because again, this is not my field of expertise, and it would be great if people who are experts in this could give me an idea what they think. So let's read everything. Now, to be clear, I've removed anything that would give you an idea of who this person is. So I've tried to keep the emails that were sent to me as accurate to the original as they can, but without revealing who he is. So I've changed very, very minor details that don't change the bulk of what it is he's trying to say. Just so that John Deere, if they were the type of company to become aggravated at someone speaking on right to repair, they don't retaliate against them. Lewis, thank you for taking the time to educate yourself on matters you do not fully understand. I appreciate what you are doing fighting for right to repair and wish you luck. However, I would also like for you to have accurate information in order to make yourself more credible. The video I would like to start with is the one published on January 26th titled, "John Deere Dealerships Are Lobbying Against Right to Repair. Farmers, please help me out." Much of your commentary is inaccurate, and I will address your points one at a time and give proof as to why. One of the things that you talk about is that farmers do not want to race their tractors. This is not entirely true. There are competitions farmers compete in with their tractors called tractor pulls. If you would like to see this, Google NTPA or go to ntpapull.com. This is the homepage of the National Tractor Pullers Association. This is the highest level of the competition in the sport, equivalent to Major League Baseball. YouTube some videos of NTPA tractor pull and you will see this is Formula One level of competition. And just like baseball has major leagues, minor leagues, AAA, college games, high school, all the way down to neighborhood kids playing at the park, Tractor pulling has the same structure. When I was younger, I would compete in these at the county level with the same tractors we farmed with, similar to how people might street race with production cars. And we did modify them to produce more power to compete better. I was doing this at 15 years old. I never knew that people race tractors because the anti-repair lobbyist was saying that they could be modified to put out more emissions, and I was saying that people just want to fix their own tractors. It's not like people, the farmers. I think I said something like, it's not like the corn guy is trying to race the avocado guy and trying to contribute to climate change. And there I was indeed wrong. I did look it up, and people do race their tractors. There actually is an industry for this, and there is an incentive to modify them to be more powerful and faster, even at the expense of emissions, apparently, just from looking at this. The tractors used in these professional pulling competitions are purpose-built for that sole use. However, farmers do modify current production tractors to produce more power in the field. This is usually referred to as chipping. The most common brand used by my customers is Steinbauer, steinbauer.cc. These devices change the fuel mapping to the engine, generating more power. This would be very similar to overclocking a CPU. The reason they do this is very simple. While Deere makes higher-powered tractors, they cost more. So instead of buying a bigger tractor, they buy a small one and add a chip to it in order to increase the horsepower. Deere does not want customers to do this for the same reason Intel will not let you overclock a low-end i5 running at 3.4 GHz and overclock it to 4.6 GHz. They want you to buy the faster chip so they lock out the ability to overclock them. And just like CPUs, the more power, the more heat they produce. On CPUs, you would upgrade the stock cooler to maybe a water-cooled system. On tractors, the cooling capacity is designed into the machine for a specific horsepower and not easily upgradable. Also, the transmissions, drive shafts, axles, etc. are designed to withstand a certain amount of power. Another point you mentioned is farmers are not trying to add to pollution by changing emission standards. This is also not entirely accurate. Google Deere PDF Delete Kit or go to allcarttuning.com. These are kits used to change the engine software and components to remove emissions devices. This often removes the EGR valve, exhaust gas recirculation, DPF, diesel particulate filter, DOC, diesel oxidation catalyst, SCR, selective catalytic reduction, AOC, ammonia oxidation catalyst, and DEF injection system, diesel exhaust fluid. This is done to save money. DEF is consumed by the engine at a rate of typically 3 to 6% of fuel consumption. So for every 100 gallons of fuel, you will need 5 gallons of DEF. The system is on all modern diesel engines, including pickup trucks and semi-trucks. Owners remove this system because DEF does not increase performance of the engine. It is injected into the exhaust system stream to aid the AOC in removing nitrous oxides from the exhaust. This increases the operating cost of the machine but adds no financial benefit. Also, the engine mapping can be changed without these emission devices to use less fuel at the same power. However, it no longer meets EPA emission standards. This I was not aware of. So he's saying here that these systems add to the cost of operating the machine because you need more fuel, but it doesn't financially help the farmer. It's just there to reduce emissions. You discussed in your video certain repairs must be completed by software used by the dealership, even if the repair is performed by the customer. This is accurate in very specific situations. The short answer to this is because of emissions. I will explain. A current production 8R series tractor can have around 45 onboard controllers. The customer has access to the diagnostic trouble codes of all 45 controllers through the touchscreen display in the cab, along with a short description of the fault. This is vastly superior to the ability of most cars. If your check engine light or service engine light comes on in your car, you must use a scan tool to retrieve the code. This is not necessary in these tractors, as this function is built into the onboard software. Of these 45 controllers, the customer can erase the DTCs themselves on 44 of them with a push of some buttons in the vast majority of the codes in the 45th. The 45th being for the engine. Of the ones the customer can erase, it is usually not necessary to do so once the repair is made. When the controller detects the fault has been repaired, the code is changed to stored instead of active, and the machine will resume normal operations with no need to interact with the software. Now, to achieve optimal performance again, some sensors and devices do need to be recalibrated. Majority of the time, this is accessible to the customer as well as using the onboard diagnostics. Now, to address the times when it is not accessible to the onboard diagnostics and the dealership laptop must be used. These are called latched DTCs. They are used when a sensor detects a problem with the engine, causing it to not meet EPA emission standards. When a fault like this occurs, it can physically damage the emissions devices DOC, DPF, AOC, and SCR. So those are, when a fault like this occurs, it can physically damage the emissions devices. Those are the devices that are in the tractor to lower emissions. These are very expensive as they are similar to the catalytic converters on your car. To date, the most expensive system I have priced out was $18,000. If farmers had the ability, they would clear this DTC every time it came up and continue to use the machine, unaware it was destroying itself and causing excessive pollution. By creating these latched codes, it does not allow the code to be cleared and keeps the machine in a derated condition, forcing the problem to be addressed instead of ignored. Yes, my customers ignore the warning on the display and continue to use the machine until the timer in the software runs out, usually a few minutes, and puts the engine into derate mode. When their power and speed are reduced to half, that gets their attention. This derate mode also helps to protect the engine from any further damage. So what I'm reading here as somebody who's not a farmer, it sounds like what he's saying is that when the check engine light comes on, this is kind of like just putting a piece of tape over it, because this is for emissions. So it's not, people are saying, you know what, okay, I'll worry about the emissions in the environment later. Let me just get through my day of farming. And like most things that, who is it in my comments that said there's nothing more permanent than a temporary solution that works? That's what this sounds like to me. But you let me know if I'm incorrect there or if he is incorrect there, because again, I'm kind of clueless about this. I tell you this not to combat you on right to repair, but to educate you on the things you're unaware of. In most cases, I am for right to repair and would like to see it expanded in the industry. I believe people advocating for right to repair need to have accurate information to seem credible when appearing in front of a legislative body or in a YouTube video. I have greatly simplified many of these topics and focus primarily on Deere's current production premium heavy agricultural equipment. I can expand or clarify on any of this more if you would like, or answer any questions you may have. There are also other more technical discussions being held in the industry related to this topic regarding things like data management, third-party access to CAN, bus, GPS steering system, and other situations that would be hard to explain without a background knowledge. Also, please let me know how I did explaining this, as I feel I will be doing it more in the future, and I would like to do a competent job at it. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you again. If you provide specific concerns, questions, and complaints you come across, I will do my best to answer them directly, but here are some of the ones I come across. This honestly strikes me as somebody that really is acting in good faith. Again, this doesn't read to me like a social media manager is just making something up, like error 53 is for security. Oh, what's that, engineer? Oh yeah, that was for debugging at the factory. Oh shit. Maybe I should have asked you before saying it. This actually seems like it comes from people that know what they're talking about. Most of the complaints, I feel, stem from a lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, misinformation, misinterpretation, and a customer's desire to complain when things don't go right and they need somewhere to place the blame. Don't get me wrong, there are real issues and we deal with them at the dealership level as well. Customers are not the only ones that struggle with it. Here are some of the complaints that are legitimate and why I feel they are done the way they are. Customers, even with the customer version of the software, still do not have the ability to clear the previously mentioned latch codes, even though they can clear any other code. Now, why they do this is speculation on my part, but I feel there is a good chance it is correct. I am aware of several other diesel engine manufacturers that have similar dealer-only requirements when it comes to emissions. This mostly has to do with a function called active regeneration. To understand what active regeneration is, you must know a little about how the system works. The filters in the exhaust only function when at full operating temperature. This is normally achieved with passive regeneration. During passive regeneration, the normal heat from the exhaust is enough to keep the system working properly. Under light engine loads and cold ambient air temperatures, this is not enough to keep the system working. When the filters begin to choke up, the system enters active regeneration. Now the engine is actively making changes to cause the exhaust gas to heat up to around 1000 degrees Fahrenheit and burn the impurities out of the filters. This process generally takes 45 minutes for a complete cycle. During this time, if something happens and the cycle is not allowed to complete, the computer records that. This can be from a malfunction, the operator manually aborting the process, or shutting the engine off during the cycle. If this happens too many times in a row, the engine goes into a service-only mode, at which time I have to use the dealership software and do a service regeneration, which typically lasts 3 hours. This is to recover the system from an excessively restricted state. The situation is most serious in semi-trucks. When they enter this mode along the interstate, must be repaired there, causing delays, expense, and risk to the driver and mechanic. This is a long explanation to get to my point. Since so many manufacturers do this even in the trucking industry, I feel that this is a mandate somehow by the EPA when these things are engineered. I am not sure why else so many manufacturers would use a similar unpopular procedure. So I think this is more than likely caused by EPA regulation and not intentional design by Deere or other manufacturers to upset their customers. They would go to great lengths to get rid of all this if they could. If you would like proof, Google Volvo diesel emission scandal. They got in a lot of trouble for defeating the government emission testing. So the short answer is this complaint is caused by government regulation and cannot be fixed by more government regulation. Once again, this is speculation on my part, but feel it is a plausible scenario. So what I'm reading here is that the reason that they have this very restrictive and draconian system is because the EPA requires it, because the EPA doesn't want people defeating the emission systems in the vehicles, and the EPA also understands that on an individual level, no individual is going to decide, I'm going to take time out of my day to fix this system that costs me extra money just so that there can be less crap in the air. This is something that society collectively wants, cleaner air, but no one individual is typically willing to interrupt their day and pay a dealer a few $100 to come by and fix it if they could just kind of let it go. That's what I'm hearing. That's how I interpret this argument, and that's how I interpret his speculation as to what it is that's going on. Another real complaint is customers are not able to program their own controllers once they purchase them. This is very true. Now, to understand why this is, you must know how it used to be done. When I first started, we could not program controllers even at the dealership. Many of the controllers are serial number specific based on the options of the machine, tuning, and security measures. Because of this, we had to order every one by serial number. Normally we get parts overnighted, but because of the extra step of the factory having to program it, first it could add a few days until we received it. This meant the customer was down for days. And if that wasn't the problem, after all, you just wasted all that time. To combat this problem, the dealerships gained the ability to program controllers. This meant we could stock a blank one and program it for whatever machine needed it, getting it running the same day, greatly improving customer service. If it wasn't the problem, you were out of hours instead of days. In the early days, this happened often. The early onboard diagnostic were poor to non-existent. The procedure in the manuals would sometimes say, try this part, and if that doesn't fix it, try this one. This is referred to as swapnostics. Now, when the system of programmable controllers was put into place, the database was created inside the dealer portal, so the only way to gain access to it was with a dealer login to the corporate website. At the time, there was really no customer portal in existence like there is today. Now, could this database be incorporated into a customer-accessible database? I don't know. I am not a software engineer. Considering the time, resources, money, failings, and aggravation involved with other systems that were incorporated, I don't know if it would be worth the expense and manpower involved to do it, for how very little it would be utilized by customers. In 25 years of doing this, I cannot think of one time I've had a customer that would be willing to even attempt to diagnose, replace, and reprogram their own controller. The risk of damaging a new controller, the investment in hardware and software, and the training and knowledge required to do it just isn't feasible. I don't think the process would be utilized enough to make it worthwhile. Also, currently the software is free for the dealership to download, and my dealership does not charge anything but our standard hourly service rate to install it. So a customer would have to program many controllers to ever see a return on investment. To continue on with the software issue in another scenario, when we make a major mechanical change to the machine, we have to update the software. This would be like if you decided to change out the manual transmission in your car for an automatic. When this happens, the dealership has to contact Deere to have new software created. This has to be done at the engineering level. Exactly how this process is done, I'm not sure. But for the customer to have this level of access to software, I would imagine it being similar to Microsoft giving you the uncompiled source code for Office. It's just not going to happen. Another common complaint that is true is the lack of independent repair shops. To my knowledge, there are no true legitimate businesses operating as independent repair shops in my area. This meaning that they have some sort of storefront, business cards, file taxes as a business, etc. Unlike cars where you have options besides the dealer like Pep Boys, Midas, Jiffy Lube, any thousands of other small independent repair shops, this does not exist for agriculture. They like to blame this on the fact that these shops don't have access to the dealer software. This is true, but I'm not sure this is entirely the reason. This is because I was born in 1973 and grew up on a farm a decade before the first computer was put on a tractor, and even then, there were no independent repair shops for agriculture in my area, or anywhere that I'm aware of. Now, maybe there is or was one somewhere, but I feel like they have to be rare. I am very curious to find out if one does or did exist that is specialized in agricultural repair. If you got your farm machine repaired, then or even now outside the dealership, it was done by a shade tree mechanic or a moonlighter. If you're not familiar with the terms, a shade tree mechanic is someone who works out of their home, typically with little or no formal education or training, kind of like a hobbyist. A moonlighter is someone who works for a dealership during the day and works on their own time at night by the moonlight for cash. Now, you might be able to get an automotive shop to do a simple repair like change the air conditioning or truck repair place to repair a hydraulic hose. But not many places outside the dealership have ever existed for major repair that I'm aware of. This probably has a lot to do with demands. I would be surprised to find out that there are not more Apple products in the state of New York than John Deere tractors with computers in the country. Let me say that again. I would be surprised to find out that there are not more Apple computers in the state of New York than John Deere tractors with computers in the country. Not many people own a $300,000 tractor. Opening a tractor repair shop would be a very risky business, even with availability to software. Availability to hardware is not an issue. Most of the tools we use are purchased from tool dealers like Snap-on, Matco, Mac, Craftsman, etc. The tools that are only available to dealers, we are happy to sell to customers if they are willing to pay for it. We sell a specialized wrench used to change starters on all tractors all the time. In some circumstances, we even borrow them out to customers. However, if someone wanted to purchase the full line of specialty tools the dealership owns, they would have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars. This just isn't practical in most cases. So this isn't a problem I see changing because of right to repair, since the issue is also caused by several other factors. Also, a factory warranty for any component related to emissions is 5 years. So not many new tractors would even go to these shops for engine repairs, since the dealership will fix it for free. And just to be transparent and clear, only the emission system is under warranty for 5 years. The rest of the machine is typically only covered for 1 to 2 years depending on the model. I have heard people complain about the lack of parts availability. So what I hear here is him saying something along the lines of, yeah, the lack of software is a problem, but the main problem is not enough people have tractors for it to be worthwhile for someone to have a we repair your independent tractor store, because it's not like here, us getting 30 or 50 or 80 MacBooks in a day is very common. Everybody has a portable hard drive that at some point that they haven't backed up. But how many people have a $300,000 farming tractor? That's one of the reasons that you don't see as much independent repair, is what he is claiming here. I have heard people complain about the lack of parts availability. This does not come from the dealer or corporate. We will sell you every part to make a brand new tractor from parts if you would like. We can also get many OEM parts dating back to before 1960, the common ones we stock. I think what they might be referring to is aftermarket parts. I don't know how much control Deere has on aftermarket part availability. Once again, I think supply has a lot to do with it. With being so few machines, there just isn't much of a market for it. The only major company I'm aware of for aftermarket parts is A&I Products. There are a few other smaller ones, but I don't know of any that deal with controllers. Also, Deere hardly makes any of their own electronics. It is all outsourced to companies like Delco, Bosch, Lucas, Phoenix, Delphi, and others. So even electronic components inside of these devices, I would think would be largely up to them to supply. And I know some of them are available because there is an independent company called AG Express that specializes in agricultural electronic component repair and harnessing. Now, maybe there is some more going on behind the scenes I'm unaware of, stopping production of aftermarket parts for electronics, but I don't know right to repair is going to fix it. As a side note, you may also want to try and contact AG Express out of Sulphur Springs, Indiana. They may be able to give you a lot more detail on the electronic repair side of things outside the dealership than I could. Probably the largest real issue that could be fixed by right to repair is lack of third-party diagnostic equipment. This was one of the big ones in the automotive industry. If you want to communicate with the machine, you must purchase software from Deere. There is no other vendor that supplies a tool that will communicate with Deere equipment. If there was, I would own it, even having full-time access to dealer-level software. The reason being redundancy. When someone comes out with a software update, something isn't going to work right, almost guaranteed. In automotive, this information had to be made available to other manufacturers. That's how for under $100 you can buy the cheap little code readers at your local auto parts store and not go to the dealership to read the code. These cheap little readers are very limited in what they can do. The professional-grade, fully functional versions of these are considerably more. I just asked my tool dealer what the top-of-the-line one would cost. He replied with $11,695 for the device and $1,499 for a one-year subscription. This is a Snap-on brand with a model name of Zeus. For a comparison, the software from the dealership costs $2,340 for a year subscription, and you supply your own computer. If you don't want to download it, the USB to install it is $35, and the cable to connect to a tractor is $1,376.93. The software can run off a web browser online. However, I have the fully installed version on my computer, so it works offline. It takes up over 140 gigabytes on my drive. It contains almost every technical manual publication ever made by Deere. It takes a little bit of computer power to efficiently run. So, the factory option is still probably more affordable at a total of $3,751.93, plus the computer to run it, than what the third-party option would be at over 13, I think he meant 13,000, not 1,300, because usually the comma would be over here. Initial investment. But even at $3,751, it would be hard to justify for an individual to own the program themselves. My dealership charges $105 for my time. So the customer would need me to work on a problem using the software for over 35 hours that first year to get a return on investment, and 22 hours every following year to cover the price of the subscription. I don't see this very likely. I do spend over 35 hours on customer machines, but very rarely that much time diagnosing the software. So here when he's talking about lack of availability of the, the code readers and all that, I think he's saying the computer equivalent of customers saying, I want a Xiaomi. Why can't I have a Xiaomi? You need to be able to sell me a Xiaomi. And me saying, you have a $3,000 laptop. You need the skills to replace the CPU on it. But even if you did have access to a Xiaomi, that's $7,200. Why would you pay $7,200 when you can just pay us $300 to $400 to fix your board? Like, that doesn't make sense. That's what I'm hearing. Now, whether this is correct or not, again, don't work in the tractor industry. But I wanted to put this out there, and you can tell me what you think of this argument. I could go on, but it is getting very late, and I feel like I'm making too many typos and grammatical errors. I will continue this at another time. I have no problem with you using this information just so long as it is not being manipulated, twisted, distorted, edited, or used out of context to change its intended meaning. I am happy to assist however I can. Keep in mind, though, I am not in any position of authority to make any definitive claims in the factual correctness of any of this. This is all information I've gathered over my years of training and experience, along with educated assumptions. If there is a specific point or topic you would like verified, I can try my best to find material at my disposal to validate it. Also, if anyone presents information to you proving anything I said false, please forward it to me. I'd like to be correct when I'm wrong so as to not spread inaccurate information and to educate myself. I will continue this another time explaining where I feel much of the farmers' frustration comes from and why they incorrectly feel right to repair will fix it. This, honestly, everything that was sent here, I think was really sent in good faith. He is saying what he thinks as someone who has worked for John Deere for about 20 years, and he's saying that if anybody says that what something I've said is wrong, please forward it to me because I want to know so I can be better informed. And I really wish that we could have these types of back and forth conversations when it comes to companies like like Apple or Samsung or anybody else, because these are productive conversations. And as I've said before, if you just go through my Reddit username, just read through 1 or 2 or 3 years of posts, I'm really more than happy to engage with people that disagree with me, argue against what I argue for, or even just fundamentally are hostile and don't like me in the pursuit of the truth and in pursuit of what it is that will make things better for everybody. These are the types of conversations that I think we should be having more often, and you as a viewer are a part of that conversation. If you are a farmer, if you are involved in right to repair as a farmer, even if you're not, or you just know about tractors, is this correct? Is this incorrect? Let me know, because again, I fix motherboards. I don't know anything about tractors or farming. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, hopefully you can teach me something. I'd like to learn. See you in the next video.